I got to go back tomorrow, but ready for 3 weeks. So anyway, yeah. Well, thanks for coming. I just thought, let me bring up a couple subjects, take any questions, obviously you got, but a few things might be of interest. One is this week is one of the deadlines for family reunification for children under 5. That deadline is tomorrow. The 26th is the next deadline. We know that the White House said they're having a hard time reaching the deadline. It sounds like they're having a hard time figuring out whose kids are whose, and they're sending people out of the country and they haven't sent the children out, and it sounds like it's a pretty big mess. But obviously the zero tolerance policy we've said is a policy of zero humanity, and we are going to keep pushing the White House to get this done. It's something I think a lot of people have reached out to us on this issue. It's really hit people both emotionally and in other ways, and we're going to definitely be on top of it and pushing, obviously, the agencies to make sure they get this done. It sounds like last week they just started doing some things that they probably should have started when they first got the court mandate to do, and we want to make sure that this gets resolved. Having been down at the border, I've seen the facilities the kids are in. I've seen the situation. I've talked to parents who may be being held in Texas, but their kids are held in New York, and it's been a serious problem, and I think this week it'll probably be discussed quite a bit in Congress with the deadline being tomorrow. So I just want to let you know that's one thing we're monitoring. Two, we this week will be officially introducing our bill around ICE to have a more humane immigration system. We just put it out, and members are coming back tomorrow, so I assume we'll start getting our co-sponsors during the week, but we're anticipating that Thursday, I think we're going to officially have it formally introduced. Already Donald Trump, actually the White House tweeted at us. I guess that's special. I should put that somewhere on the wall. But Earl Blumenauer and I, for this issue, bottom line is they're already putting out all the misinformation we expected. First thing they said is, Democrats want open borders. That's either stupid or intentionally misleading, because ICE does not patrol the borders. I'm not sure which. Neither one makes me comfortable. But the idea that we're not saying we want open borders. ICE does not patrol the borders. ICE is supposed to protect the interior, created after 9/11 to make sure that we address things like domestic terrorism, address human trafficking, gangs, drugs at a higher level, higher crimes. Right now, 55% of the crimes in the federal courts are there for immigration-related cases, and there's been some other stats that have come out that the White House has not been very forthright, but we've gotten through other records that, again, most of what they're doing right now is going after people with parking violations, in some cases decades-old tickets, including a doctor in Michigan who's been here since he's 5. Now he's 43. He had some things as a teenager, and they went to try to deport him. We've had stories that in Beloit, in the parking lot at the Head Start program, ICE agents have been hanging out. Again, more of intimidation. None of these things are about protecting the country from domestic terrorism or about some of the other bigger crimes that it's supposed to be going after. So that's why we introduced the bill. So one, it's not about open borders, because ICE doesn't work at the borders. That's one of the big lies. I think another big lie that's been put out there is that there's all this crime coming in and that we're not going to stop crime. I would argue just the opposite. The president's policy of using ICE to go after people with 2-decade-old parking tickets is more putting us at risk, because what's happening is you're not going after those more serious crimes, the things that could really affect this country in a bigger way. And two, you have to, in order to actually go after bad players, gain confidences in the communities you go into. And now if you see an ICE jacket, you run, because it could be you that's being deported, it could be a family member, a coworker, it could be someone else, but ICE is no longer able to do what they're supposed to do. So while some of the debate has been semantic, do you reform it, do you abolish it, bottom line is there is great understanding that we have to do something completely different, because ICE, as it currently functions, is broken thanks to the president. And we have to figure that out. And the president keeps saying, you won't even want to leave your home. There's MS-13 people everywhere. 228 people in the last fiscal year out of over 300,000 at the border were MS-13. Again, the traffic tickets, now that we're getting the data, they're going after people with traffic tickets and things like that. So we're not even going after MS-13, really, in the way that he makes it sound like. So we're putting this bill out there to make sure that we're doing the right thing and dealing with ICE, and we'll see how many sponsors we get on Thursday, but obviously that's a little bit of a debate. Supreme Court, obviously not in my house, but we're going to be talking about it a lot after 9 p.m. tonight, unless it gets leaked earlier, of who the president has selected. I guess 8 p.m. our time. I think there's a lot of things to look for, what's going to happen, and I don't think we exactly know. I've heard different senators put out different kind of measuring sticks. In some case, they said, well, we should wait till the Mueller investigation's done. Some people are saying, well, it's all about Roe versus Wade. Honestly, it's about finding out who the nominee is, and that's going to take a little bit. But we'll be watching and being involved at some point on that. But at this point, I don't have a whole lot to say because we don't know who the person is that's going to be involved, and I think that's going to be very important as a start of the conversation. Real quick on tariffs. So I think many of you know I've worked very extensively around trade issues in the last session of Congress, opposing the TPP deal for many, many reasons. Donald Trump on his 30,000-foot level talked about trade in a way that I think is, I've been told by pollsters why he won Wisconsin and Michigan and likely Pennsylvania was because at a 30,000-foot level he talked about job loss. And I think that resonated with people, especially in my hometown of Kenosha, where 14,000 people used to make cars and no one does today. The problem is he currently has no trade policy whatsoever, but he's implementing tariffs. Sometimes by Twitter, sometimes by other ways, but it's done in a completely chaotic manner. When you don't lay out a trade policy of what you actually stand for and you just start throwing out tariffs, it's really hard to figure out what he's really trying to accomplish. I'm not against the use of targeted tariffs, especially against countries that violate the rules. But we're using them against Canada and the European Union, which makes it kind of confusing. And right now we're seeing some retaliation on things like soybeans and cheese that are going to affect people in Wisconsin. Again, without a bigger picture about what he wants to accomplish on trade, it's kind of like putting someone in a room to make a dish, and you have all the ingredients in front of them, but they're not looking at the proportions to put. So they've got lots of the ingredients, and it might come out right, or it really could come out awful. And that's kind of where we're at with this president. We just don't know exactly where he's going. So we are trying to have more meetings with his U.S. trade rep, who is a little more clear and coherent on maybe where they want to go. The problem is we haven't heard the president offer that same kind of coherence in message. Pruitt's gone. The swamp, is looking for a new vacancy, I guess. Looks like Andy Wheeler will get that spot, who is more at least of a agency professional, but he's also the person who put a hit list out there on some of the environmental regulations. So we're still going to have those issues to deal with. But, I think the fact that it even took that long for Pruitt to leave after I think we were up to over 13 official investigations, but over 20 potential investigations, including my favorite, trying to get his staff to get him a used mattress from the Trump Hotel. I'll leave you put your own joke in because there's plenty, but that is certainly bizarre would be the most generous term I could use. And then finally, if you want to talk about elections or any other thing, I'm glad to talk about whatever you want to. So let me just open it up with that.
So ICE doesn't patrol the border, but they do enforce immigration laws within the interior of the country. When you talk about abolishing them, are you saying let's stop enforcing immigration laws within the interior of the country? Or
Mark, thank you. Because I didn't finish that part, so thank you very much. So what the bill essentially does is that there's a time specific that ICE will go away and a time specific to come up with an answer. So a commission will look at the essential duties, which there are, that ICE has to do. Because remember, the creation of ICE was 20 different agencies had parts that were put together to create ICE and a couple other agencies that were created at the time. The fact that there are agencies already doing things like human trafficking right now is a good example. Human trafficking is covered by Department of Justice, FBI, Department of Labor, and ICE, right? Just to give you a few agencies. So what you do is take some of those essential duties, make sure you give them to agencies that are better able to accomplish that because of ICE's broken brand right now. And then the functions that I think are being abused, which is this going after people with parking tickets, in some cases decade-old parking tickets, to deport them, which is what he's doing, I think, to try to justify the need for a wall. Although I wish it was as simple as that, because Chuck Schumer, and I didn't agree with it, but offered up money for a wall, and he wouldn't take yes for an answer. I don't even know if he wants a wall. I think he wants to be able to talk about at rallies a wall, because as a narcissist that he is, he loves the admiration of his followers when he talks about a wall, but he actually hasn't ever taken yes when people try to put it out there. But I think that's what he's trying to do right now, is gin up those numbers. Those functions should go away with ICE. We shouldn't just be going after people with parking tickets and things like that. That's a misuse of an agency that was created after 9/11 for very specific reasons.
Well, when we talk about enforcing immigration laws, I mean, it sounds like you're saying parcel out these duties to other agencies?
Yeah, well, other agencies
Or
did it
other agencies
beforehand.
better
Other
suited?
agencies enforced in the interior around immigration previously. I just don't think it makes sense at a time that we're actually having national debates about immigration reform to round up people with parking tickets, right?
Sure.
And that's clogging up our federal courts. 55% of the court cases right now that they're dealing with are in that area. So instead, let's use it in a smarter way, which would be have some other agencies take on some of those activities. And perhaps it's a rebranded sort of agency, although I don't think so, but maybe that's what they'll come up with, a commission. They're going to bring it back to Congress. But, the problem right now I really have, and this is coming from high-level ICE agents, 19 of them put a letter saying basically the same thing. The agency can't operate anymore because of how the president's abused it. They can't get the confidences they need to in the communities they need to. So in my opinion, that's what we have to do, is abolish it in order to get back to the functions that is why it was created.
So this is my other question, is you keep talking about the president. Is your issue with the agency itself, or is it with the policy directives that
Well,
are coming from
and the agencies even said they're doing what the president said,
Right.
right? So it's the directives of the president that are the problem. And it's those directives that are causing them to, instead of go after the crimes they were assigned, created to do, instead they're the president's police force, right? That's what he's using them as. And by doing that, that's creating the problem of now we can't have them operate in the same way, getting confidence within communities. They're not going after the right types of crime, and all they're doing is ginning up numbers so the president can create justify the crisis he's created at the border that doesn't exist.
So
I
is
ask
that-
you a stupid question.
Yeah.
What is in this bill? You
Yeah.
I mean, you.
And that's what I just said.
Yeah, but
I'll get you the actual language too. That's no
But
problem.
you're saying, just so I understand.
Create a commission, time specific that ICE is going to go away. Create a commission to reassign the essential duties of ICE to other agencies, and then get rid of the abuses that have been happening with it. Pretty simple.
Some believe this is creating a problem in elections across the country for Democrats, that you're giving the president an opening. It's become an issue in the Senate race here. How do you answer those critics?
Yeah, I think by people who think too much or want to abuse the issue, they're going to put it out there, right, with the whole, you want open borders, which again is, we pointed out, is the biggest lie, right, because it doesn't even relate. ICE doesn't operate the borders. This is something that's coming from the grassroots. And, I have a bumper sticker on my car for a reason that says if the people lead, eventually the leaders will follow. I'm putting out the issue that people are asking us to. But whether people are saying reform it or they're saying abolish it, what we're all saying is right now ICE is being misused by the president in a way that makes it unable to function as it needs to. So quite honestly, we're all saying much of the same thing, and how exactly we fix it may be of some different points of view how we get it done. But the reason we have the issue right now around family separations, and the reason we have the issue of if you come to a legal point of entry to claim asylum, which is the way you're supposed to by international law, and they're not being allowed to, and then forced to come into other ways or forced to risk being kidnapped by the cartel, is all because of the president. So it all comes back to it's the president's misuse of immigration policy, and specifically of ICE in the interior, that's creating the problem that we pretty much all agree on. And maybe it's the exact way you do the solution. There's some differences. So to me, it's not a
Well, Jay Johnson is
divisive
saying
issue.
Reform it, not, he thinks it's crazy to abolish it.
Yeah,
It's
but honestly, it's semantics. So if you reform the duties of it and give things to other agencies and stuff, that's what I'm saying, right? I do think the only differences that he and I are having is when you see an ICE jacket, and this is what the 19 current ICE senior level officials who wrote a letter said, is that when you see that ICE jacket right now, people run instead of being able to gain the confidence to get the information to go after real bad players, which is why the agency was created. So again, this is starting the debate. Let's figure it out. But the bottom line is we all agree ICE is being misused by a president who's made it his personal police force and just trying to gin up numbers to prove a crisis at the border. So I think that's where there's the greatest amount of
One more question on
continuity.
that, how it plays politically. Do you think Gwen Moore or Ron Kind will sign on to this?
I don't know. It doesn't matter who signs onto the bill. What matters is on this debate that one, we really make sure there are no longer are children separated from their parents. Two, are they really being unified? Are we taking care of that? Because right now, under the president's policy, a 5-year-old can still be kept in a cage with their mother. So we still have that problem, right? Three, how do we make sure that we're not just going after people with parking tickets and things like that in order to justify numbers at the border? These are all the issues that we need to kind of be dealing with. And I think those are what people should be debating. I think when people want to debate about a bill or sponsoring a bill or the specifics of a bill, that's missing, the bigger issue.
I ask you about something
Yeah.
else. Do you stand by your endorsement of Randy Bryce, given the news about his prior arrests that hadn't been out there publicly before?
Yeah, I think actually at least I knew about them before. I mean, I think I've seen a lot of those out publicly before. And, I think he's been very about saying, look, I was much younger when I did this, what was wrong, and it's not the person who I am today. I still would argue when you look at Randy Bryce versus a corporate lawyer who's outsourced jobs to Mexico in both the corporations that he ever worked for when he wasn't the driver for Paul Ryan, there's a real contrast in a district of someone who, for many years of his life got by paycheck to paycheck, works as an iron worker, has gone through health scares of his own and his family's, single parent. I mean, to me, that's my hometown area, right? I know Kenosha, and my husband's from Janesville. That is the district, most everything else about him. So I think this is, the fact that he's been able to change from those years and be a really good dad and, a very productive member of the community. I think that's who Randy Bryce is.
But Brian Stiles not his opponent. Kathy Myers is his opponent. So why not side with the
Yeah.
candidate who doesn't have a criminal history like Randy
Yeah,
Bryce?
yeah. I don't know how much you want to put on it, but it's going to be Randy Bryce and Brian Stiles on August 14th. So,
And are you concerned at all about the downtick in his fundraising in the second quarter?
Any other Democrat running for Congress in the country or Republican who could raise 1.2 and a quarter would be popping champagne corks at the end of a quarter to raise 1.2 million. I think the next highest I saw anyway, as people are starting to release numbers, someone had $1 million, and that's like, it used to be 300,000 was like a big quarter. Then it became 500,000, and that's where most people are at. But that's still a extremely robust fundraising operation.
Can I ask, PolitiFact just did a kind of odd check recently
Sure.
on an issue that came up when Kelda Roy's ran against you
Yeah.
For Congress, about her maybe pretending to be gay or trying to insinuate that she had a partner at the time. Do you recall that happening? Did you hear about that during?
Yeah, I was there. Let's say that Kelda's changed as well in 6 years, hopefully, right? Because I was there that day, and I was standing next to Mark Miller, and I remember as she talked about, her passionate, so glad that marriage equality finally was available, and how finally her and her partner could go to Iowa and get married. Mark Miller turned to me and said, I didn't know Kelda was gay. And a couple other people said that to me that day. And I'm like, she's not. So, it was a bad political calculation she made. She made several during the campaign. Remember, I was in the pocket of the Koch brothers. I hang out with them all the time in Washington. And a few other things. But I think, that's a mistake that, if you got to be honest and authentic. And the number 1 and 2 quality of any Democrat running for Congress should be that they're honest and authentic, because I think Foxconn is the path to how a Democrat takes the governorship back. You can't waste $4.5 billion of tax dollars to a foreign corporation and not invest in schools and roads and all the rest. And there's only a few things that can supersede that, and one of those is if you don't have that personal honesty and integrity. So I think any candidate I talk to, and I talk to many of them, I stress to them. One of the reasons I like Randy Bryce so much, he's probably the most authentic candidate I have worked with. What you see is what you get, and I like that. But I think that's what's important. So I'm sure she's had 6 years to think about those things and probably regrets, having done that.
So do you think she's honest and authentic today?
I hope that, through the campaign, she'll keep that as a forefront.
So do you think she is?
I haven't seen a lot of the forums. In fact, I'm trying to I'd love to be a moderator of a forum. It would be great. I think that'd be a lot of fun to do. But I haven't seen much on the campaigns. Let me say it this way. I am impressed that all the candidates appear to be moving towards this clean campaign pledge that I think Mayline Mitchell first put out, and then Tony Evers repeated. And since then, from the reports I've seen, I think that's really smart, right? The person that you're running against is Scott Walker. It's not each other. And I think if they keep that focus, that's better for everyone. I think I saw Kelda and others all say that's what they're going to adhere to, and I think that's really positive.
There's this thing in the ether out there that you're really against Kelda and that you're still pissed off about that campaign. I'm going to be blunt to you.
Yeah,
rather than
no.
dance around.
I think I've pretty much said I think almost any of the Democrats running are in a good position to beat Scott Walker. Kelda's come to my fundraisers since then. I've had a chance to campaign baby give a nice little affection to, so I don't think that's true and fair. But you asked me a question, I gave you an honest answer, and if I didn't, then if I'm telling you everyone should be honest and authentic, and then I'm being dishonest and not authentic, then I would be a pretty crappy deliverer of a message to governor candidates.
So you would be okay if she's the nominee?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, it's the other thing. Other than, and I might be saying this wrong, but I think other than Mike McCabe, everyone has said they'll back whoever wins, and that's another great thing. That's what we should be doing.
So is it a problem if he becomes the nominee?
No, I'm going to back whoever wins, and I hope Mike will eventually. I just think, and again, I could be wrong because I know since then he's been asked the question, but from earlier reports I saw.
He'll back, if the nominee is one of the people who came out of this Wisconsin's Choice thing, he'll back it, but he hasn't said that of the whole field.
Yeah, I'll bet he'll come around. I mean, again, this is one where, look, they're all, even the guy I don't really know from Kenosha, better than Scott Walker. That's not too difficult, so I think that's a good thing. But I actually think the candidates right now, I've been very impressed with how they're running a race. I mean, you can have a difference on an issue, but you shouldn't go at it personally, or you certainly can't, lie, because if you put that out there, I mean, that's the one thing I really think backfires, so you just have to be very, very careful about how you present things. And again, so far I've been very impressed with where most of the candidates are on how they're talking about the race.
There's been a call from a number of people from Matt Flynn to drop out of the race because of his representation of the Milwaukee Archdiocese. Do you think he should remain in the race?
I'll be real honest, I have not read the stuff. Chris Taylor I have talked to about this, but I have not read what she's read, and I do need to do that.
So open question. Where you stand on
I
it?
honestly, if I haven't seen the data, I really can't give you an answer that would be fair.
Just one more for you on ICE. I mean, I
Yeah.
keep hearing your critiques kind of going back to the president.
Yeah.
And it's like, if a president makes a decision, for instance, to start a war that we disagree with, we don't say, let's abolish the military.
Sure. So what
You know what I'm saying? So I'm trying to understand what you feel like is systemically wrong with the agency, that
So
it needs to be abolished versus
the
we need
main
a different
thing,
White House.
and it goes back to what the 19 agents, senior agents said as well. So in order to really go after bad players who are doing human trafficking or who may be a domestic terrorism threat, which everyone kind of forgets it was created after 9/11, with that being one of the main focuses, ICE has to be able to get confidence as the communities they go into. Right now, because they're seen as a deportation, the president's police force, the president's deportation force, the agency can't operate like they need to because the brand has been broken by the president's directives to them. So that's the real problem. I mean, I think some people are saying you got to reform it, get rid of the president's abuses. I'm just afraid that the minute that ICE jacket comes out now, you can't accomplish what you need to because of how the agency's been misused by the president. So it's not a administrative knock at ICE. It's the direction that they're taking, which has been the president's direction.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna try for leadership? Might as well ask you. Everybody
Oh, good.
wants to be in leadership.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I get some calls over the last week. We're meeting first as a progressive caucus to talk about who might be some people interested. My goal is not about any individual person, but that we have several members of the Progressive Caucus involved in the leadership team. There is a scenario where the current leadership may not be in leadership. Obviously, Crowley's not, no matter what, right? Our caucus chair, that's an opening. But my goal is to make sure, because we're the largest values-based caucus right now at 78 of the members out of the 193 of us, and that number is going to go up with November elections, that we have seats at the table. So first, we're going to talk among the Progressive Caucus, but there's also conversations among other members about maybe putting together some kind of a potential coalition slate. And I'm just...
When would that be by?
Well, by November elections. But, I mean, there's so many ifs, right? Like, first of all, would it be Nancy Pelosi doesn't have enough votes, which is a scenario. And then possibly does the number 2 or 3 want to do it? Would they have enough votes? Is a scenario. A bunch of these new people has said they're not going to vote for Nancy. So who won, who didn't, right? That's part of the numbers. So a lot of it's a math thing.
This is for after the election?
Yeah, we do this all... Yeah,
But it's not going to be anything before.
No, it's within the first 2 weeks after the election. Now, I can't say that Joe Crowley might, he hasn't said this to us yet, but he might say, I'm going to step aside now and let the vice chair come in. I don't know what's going to happen on all that front, but, you know, and I've done leadership before. I mean, by the co-chair of the finance committee. I mean, there's pluses and minuses to it. You know, on the Progressive Caucus, we have punched below our weight class for a very long time, and we're finally getting to the point of punching at our weight class. We're completely redoing our nonprofit entity. It's taken a year and a half. I've been working on this, and we're raising $1.5 million to recreate the old Democratic study group, have our own policy people, you know, suggesting legislation, reviewing things. We're getting full-time fellows to go in offices. We might have someone who just works on Medicare for all in an office of maybe the author or one of the lead sponsors of it. That's where most of my energy goes to right now, is making sure we're ready for January to hit the ground running, and that's what I'm focusing on.
The President's going to announce his Supreme Court pick tonight.
Yeah.
In your view, what should Democrats be doing, both in terms of the confirmation process and making this an issue in the election? You know.
Yeah, and you know, quite honestly, there's a few scenarios there too. I'm not sure exactly how it's going to play. Who is the person? If it's someone that, you know, there are some other issues that could lengthen the process a little. I assume they're going to try to get this done before the election. So how this affects the election will depend whether it's done before or after. I think there is still some soreness from how they abused President Obama when he had Merrick Garland, and you know, he had plenty of time to have appointed, and they didn't. I'm hearing people like Cory Booker say that maybe they should wait until the Mueller investigation is done. So there's individual senators that have different kind of litmus tests. I just think there's a lot of variables that we don't know yet that you're probably going to get starting to get answered this week, but I don't think you'll even have all the answers this week. It's probably going to evolve over a couple. And if the Senate actually is in all August, like they're saying, which I don't really believe, I think they'll be in maybe for a week or so. I know how the Senate operates. That's going to matter too, right? How much time they have to get this done. But I just don't think we know all those answers yet. Certainly from a base perspective, one day I decided to start my day with Fox and Friends at 8:15 in the morning and ended on Laura Ingraham on Fox at 10:45 at night, which was an interesting day. And while I was in the green room, I was listening to some of the conservatives behind the Supreme Court stuff, because they were on before me, but in the green room talking. They think they see this as something to finally break into the problem they're having with their base coming out, because, you know, as much as a lot of people aren't happy with the president separating, you know, parents and kids and all that sort of thing, and they haven't been coming out to vote, and all these specials, they think this could help unify people again around abortion. But the same is true of us, although our base has been coming out already. But this certainly, so lots of variables to see, and who the actual pick is going to probably be a pretty major factor in determining the next steps. Yeah, good. All right, well, thank you. Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, no problem.